To assume you know nothing about makeup, and I'm going to make makeup simple for you. This is my series Makeup Made Simple, where I'm trying to make makeup as accessible for people who may not know how to use it. And today we're talking about a sponge versus a brush for application of foundation, and we're going to do a side by side and compare. So first I'm going to go in with a brush on this side of my face, and I'm going to push this in a stippling motion, but I'm also kind of tugging and tapping, okay? And this is going to give us more coverage. It's going to make the product go longer way, but it is going to apply more product to your face. So if you are someone who doesn't like super full coverage, or you don't want it to seep into fine lines or look crepey or creasy, then you might struggle more with a brush. It's not going to look worse with a brush. You just might struggle to work out those kinks and problems with a brush, but you are going to get your product to go a much longer, fuller way, and we're going to get a nice, beautiful, even coverage with no brush lines or brush strokes, as long as you're doing it correctly. Now for a sponge, it must be wet. If it is dry, click off this video. If you're using a dry sponge, girl, actually stay. That's what this series is for. In no way, shape, or form, in any capacity, at any point in your entire existence, should you be using a dry sponge ever. If you are, throw it away. There's no point in using a dry sponge. Sponges absorb product. Sponges absorb water. Sponges absorb anything. That's what they're intended to do, is to sponge up and soak up a product, right? So if it's dry, it's just going to soak up all of your product, and you're just going to waste your foundation. Some of it might transfer onto your skin, but it's a mess, okay? And also it's going to be hard and stiff, and it's going to be like an expo marker. When you go wipe over an expo marker and try to like draw over it again, it's just going to erase it. That's kind of like what using a dry sponge is like. So I'm going to take this product on the back of my hand on my wet, damp sponge. It's already absorbed water, so it's not going to absorb nearly as much product, but it is going to absorb some, and it's going to give us a more natural, lighter coverage and ensure that nothing really soaks in to creases or fine lines, and it can look quite beautiful and quite flawless, but it isn't going to give you quite the same type of coverage as a brush is, but it can still look really, really beautiful and get into all those fine lines as well. So it still looks really beautiful. We have no demarcation or weirdness, but it's not as full coverage as the brush. And you can even go in and build it up with the sponge, but again, you're just not going to get the same type of coverage that you do when you use a brush than when you use a sponge, but it still looks beautiful and flawless. My preferred method is going in with a brush all over my face and then going back in with the wet sponge to make sure nothing is kind of building up in any lines. It's a really quick way to make sure you have a nice, full, even coverage with no mess ups and no mishaps. But I know not everyone has the time for that. So I would say if you're someone who is like stuck in their ways and their muscle memory isn't going to allow you to use a brush in the correct way, then definitely go in with a sponge. But if you're someone who wants like a more full coverage look, depending on the foundation, you of course can use a brush with a skin tint and get a much lighter coverage. I just think sponges are more foolproof and easy. As long as it's damp, you're going to probably not run into as many issues as a beginner as you might with a brush. What is that noise?